I think my heart now beats for three. Obsessed and so obscure. You and me and Christopher Lee. Obsessed and so obscure. I think my heart now beats for three.
Welcome to part 2 of Television Themes with Friends. I'm Courtney, and as always, we've got Tara.
Hello.
And Jesse.
Hey.
In true television fashion, we left you on a cliffhanger in part 1, or as much of a cliffhanger as you can have without any sort of suspense involved. We hope that you've enjoyed the deep dive into some British TV history so far. I suppose if you haven't enjoyed it, you wouldn't be back for part 2. In this episode, we'll be joined again by Samantha, and then we'll call on another friend from across the pond to guide us through the rest of the album. And we are very, very grateful for both of them, because without their assistance, we would be so in over our heads.
Without their assistance, this would have been a 15-minute episode, and it would have been so boring. We realized that this album is so well loved, and like probably one of the most well loved. Even people who aren't big fans of Matt's music love this album. Well, I mean, British people anyway. Americans are like, yeah, I don't get it, but British people do. And we wanted to make sure that we were able to give it the attention and detail and frankly the love that it deserves. So hopefully we've done our job.
And if we haven't, I'm sure you'll all let us know as well.
Yes, please let us know if you disagree, if you agree, if you love it, if you hate it.
If you feel indifferent, just say hi.
This episode, I swear, has felt like a marathon. It's been a lot. So much information for this one.
Yeah, Matt promoted this album really heavily. There were a lot of interviews, a lot of radio interviews. He did multiple interviews with BBC Radio, podcasts. If you are really wanting to hear Matt talk a lot more about this album, we'll have the links on Anchor and have fun deep diving.
Yeah. And unfortunately, one of the BBC Six podcasts is no longer available on their website. And then also a couple of the not the newspaper. What year is it? Newspapers. A couple of the magazine articles, they're back issues now. So, but I did include the links if you want to purchase. I think they both have digital copies. But yeah, I included the links for both just in case.
But if that sounds like overkill, we seek out every last piece of media, so you don't have to.
Right. I mean, yeah, you're listeing to us.
Yeah.
So, and we picked out all the good stuff. You know, we did the hard
I
work.
promise
we
there's
did
nothing
anyways.
juicy we left out. There weren't any revelatory quotes that we just kept to ourselves.
You're not sharing, you're not keeping any of the answers to any of our burning questions to yourself without sharing them with our listeners.
Buried deep in the recesses of one of those radio interviews, Matt talked about why he doesn't drive, but we decided that was the lost interview, and that's only for our ears.
It wasn't relative to the content of this episode. Oh my gosh.
Oh, I wish.
Nothing but professionalism
I
here.
wish.
Yeah. I mean, we would
Yeah.
never.
Clearly.
Go on a
He
tangent.
doesn't drive. Why he doesn't play the drums. What else did we need to
He
know?
does play the drums on this album.
He does on this album, yes. Not on a regular basis. I don't
Drums, the
remember.
bongos.
I don't remember other burning questions at this point. There's been a lot. I hope Matt's making a list of them, because otherwise we're gonna have
I
to go back
assume
and
he
listen
is.
to these again to figure out remember what our burning questions were.
Jesse pointed out to me a while back that apparently, because Jesse does our editing courageously, heroically, that apparently in every episode I say some variation on, Matt, if you're listening, and
don't
then
know.
just drop
Yeah.
some burning question that I'd love him to answer. So now I can't say that anymore because I'm self-conscious.
No, you
But
have
Matt,
to,
if you're
because
listening-
it's like your catchphrase.
Yeah.
People are gonna see you on the street and they're gonna be
cool.
like, "Hey, Matt, if you're listening."
Give you the finger guns.
Oh my gosh. So good. Anyways, let's move on to the Liverbirds, which we were told it is the Liverbirds and not the Liverbirds, which we also we didn't even know that much. This song was written by John Gorman, Roger McGough, and Mike McGear. And it ran from 1969 to 1979, and then it was apparently rebooted in 1996 and had about 86 episodes overall.
Apparently that 1996 reboot was not well received, and everyone involved kind of felt like it was a mistake later on. It followed the characters after their failed marriages in middle age, and sounds like that didn't quite work.
Yeah, so this was a little bit... I would have only been about 9 at the maximum at this time, being born in 1970, which now makes me seem incredibly old. But it was about 2 young women living together in a flat in Liverpool, which in itself was a totally new idea. This is really the first time that women had been the central characters. There were male characters in it as well, but it was about the women. It was about them. Young women living independently, having jobs, having boyfriends, late 60s, the cusp of the 70s, and kind of like what that meant for women, really. So I think it was quite important in that respect that it showed that. I think it's been repeated a few times over the years, because I am aware of it and I know I've seen bits of it, and I've asked a few people about it as well. I asked some friends at work over that sort of spanned a sort of greater age range and things to sort of really understand from them what they remembered of it and where they thought it sat in terms of the context of the 70s and particularly what its portrayal of women. And I think one of the first things that did come through is that it was really the only thing that put women front and centre in terms of the casting and the stories. It was a bit of stereotypical portrayal of working class and middle class people. Though I think one of the girls was supposed to be more working class and one of them was a bit more middle class and had a very sort of pushy mother and stuff like that. But so you know, a bit of stereotyping going on. It maybe wouldn't have sort of worked in these days, but you know, the comments from people that I got feedback from were that it was just really good to see this portrayal of women and growing up. It made you think, oh, this is really exciting, you know, the big hair, the clothes. It felt like different possibilities were opening up. And also it's quite, having been based in Liverpool, had like the regional accents, which really weren't a thing on TV, apart from like Coronation Street, which is based in Manchester. But I think it's probably the first sort of mainstream TV thing that had Liverpool accents. And the liver birds, obviously, are the mythical bird creatures that are the symbol of Liverpool. And at the big Royal Liver building on the pier head in Liverpool has got these enormous great big statues of the liver birds, and they're supposed to be like the protectors of Liverpool or something. I don't want to offend any Liverpudlians listening, and I hope that I haven't misrepresented their culture. I'd hate to do that.
We misrepresent
that's my understanding of what that's my understanding of what that symbolises, and it's on the Liverpool Football Club crest and things like that. So it's a known symbol. Even if you don't know what it is, you will have seen it as a sort of brand for Liverpool. And obviously the liver birds, women of Liverpool, I guess that's kind of like how it works in the title as well.
Yeah, I was just thinking that it's like kind of a double meaning, like birds.
Yeah,
like, you know,
yeah.
Like
it's a clever pun.
Women birds.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like it.
And so it's written by Carla Lane, who I think what sort of runs through her work, there's this sort of stuff about life and social commentary, which is underneath the comedy but still very much there, which I think is quite interesting as well.
Written by a woman for women to be the main actress.
Yeah.
That does sound like it would be really groundbreaking. I mean, they also sound like they were trend setting, which is really cool too.
Yeah, so Matt said in Shindig magazine back in October 2018 about the liver birds, the main call for this was the music. I wasn't interested in the words for that or the sentiment. What I did like was what the bass and drums were doing, and I knew it would be a good chance for the rhythm section to show off what they're doing.
He also said in one of the BB6 music interviews from 2018, the one that I don't have as much of a connection with would be the liver birds, because that had been done and dusted by the time I was little. But the thing about that was it was the bass and the drum thing that I just loved, and I just wanted to do it, you know?
The drum and bass are prominent on this song. The thing that really stands out for me is the vocals that he did leave in. His la 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 la.
Yeah.
I don't know if we were talking about this actually before recording this episode, if that's intended to sound funny. To me, in his like deep baritone voice, that like little la 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 melody just sounds hilarious.
I like it. I think it's super cute.
It's very cute.
I think that his version, this is one where I think it's more of a cover than a classic. He did it justice because it's the same melody, but his is more upbeat. It's jazzier. He has the la la la's rather than the full lyrics. But yeah, I like this version of it. I think he did a good job with keeping it true to the original, but also kind of updating it and making it a little bit more of his own.
I'd be curious how this song landed on his radar in the first place. If it's not a show he grew up with, it's not a Ronnie Hazelhurst song. It's kind of a deep cut as far as TV themes go, which really I think shows that he is a little bit of a nerd for this kind of stuff.
I wonder if somebody else brought it to his attention. Like, he hangs out with, like, Eddie Pillar a lot. I wonder if maybe, and he's older than Matt, and I wonder if maybe one of his older friends was like, hey, maybe consider doing this one, or maybe they brought him a bunch of songs that they were interested in their youth and were like, this one's not anywhere either. Maybe he chose some of those just to fill out the album a little bit, because I don't see how he would have any sort of knowledge of the show, really.
It's something that a lot of people have heard about and a lot of people know about. Okay. So it's not so obscure that no one's heard of it.
So it still has cultural significance.
I think it does. I think it's still around in the sort of cultural consciousness kind of thing.
So that makes sense.
But I agree. It's not an obvious one for him to choose. There's lots of other things that he could have chosen that are more iconic, really, in terms of the shows and also in terms of the music. So it is an interesting choice from him. He's based his choice on I like that music, and I want to recreate that rather than I've got a connection with this show.
Yeah, and I kind of think that the next one is a little bit like that also in a way. The next one is World in Action.
World in Action was a public affairs show that ran for 1,275 episodes over the course of 1963 to 1998. This theme song was written by Jonathan Weston and Sean Phillips. This is my favorite song on the album, far and away. Talking about why he chose this song, Matt said more recently on the You're Not on the List podcast in July 2022, he was actually asked by the host if he was old enough to remember any of these shows actually airing, and said, as a tiny kid, but anything that sort of frightened me, I can remember. World in Action did. It seemed like the scariest thing ever. Any kind of current affairs thing, where people were gravely serious with that kind of music, I found more sort of frightening, than any sort of horror film. The host said, well, World in Action had that pretty deep montage, didn't it, going over the thing of bombs and wars? Matt said it did. It had a Hammond organ, yeah. And I think that's why I'm obsessed with the Hammond organ. I think it comes from World in Action. I'm pretty sure.
That's so relatable, because I remember... this show, just watching the opening credits would have scared me as a kid too. I remember sitting in my parents' bedroom, and they were big fans of Unsolved Mysteries, and right after that was America's Most Wanted. And just the opening sequence of Unsolved Mysteries still gives me chills. It is the scariest piece of music followed by the scariest show I can ever remember. And part of which because when they did solve the crimes, it was usually people that would be found in Florida, so that didn't help any. And I just remember being absolutely terrified of it, but I have like the whole series on DVD, because if I want to watch something that's kind of creepy, I always get the urge to watch that show. And every single episode with the opening montage and that freaking music, man, it is so terrifying.
Yeah.
And
I'm playing it all in my head right now.
Yes. And
it's so distinct.
I can relate to to him being scared of this for that exact same reason, because this is something that definitely would have scared me too.
It is a really intense opening montage.
It really is.
So Matt said on a Chris Hawkins BBC 6 interview, World in Action, the original, I think the brief that they got, I think it was a Hammond organ player and an acoustic guitarist, were just told basically to sort of like jam. I don't know which one sort of hit the D minor first, but one of them did, and they just kind of jammed for 20 minutes in D minor, and then gave it to the show. And the show sort of edited it to be what it is. And over the years, drums were added and things, but that sort of started as a jam, and then it was kind of cobbled together. So I tried to stick as far near to it, but there's like a touch of the late 70s version where the bass and the drums came in.
his version is sick. Like, it is so good. And I don't think if you listen to this piece of music separate from the TV show, I would have thought the same about the music. It is really amazing. His is, it's a very good representation, but his is definitely more of a cover than a true replication of the World in Action theme. And this is
definitely one where he took some liberties.
Yeah, he took some liberties and he did such a great job. This is my favorite song on the whole album. This is one of my favorite songs that he's done just in general. It is so good. And he basically he took it and he just ran with it. Like, he started with the same melody and then he updated it, he refreshed it. His jam part of it is different and I think it works better than the original. This is like the best song period on this entire album.
Which is funny because it's not a true jam. He plays acoustic, electric, and bass guitars on this song in addition to piano, bongos, and of course the Hammond and Farfisa organs. Drums are handled by James Sedge, friend of the show, James Sedge.
Yes.
So even though this has that really authentic jam sound of two people playing live, he did handle most of the instrumentation on this. Can I just say that the bongos are kind of the secret MVP of this song? Like, they really make it. Of course, the organ's more prominent and the rhythm section, but yeah, those bongos kind of kind of chug it along. And I might love the image of Matt playing bongos.
I really love the fact that he's like, just not afraid to use bongos. I feel like that's a really underrated instrument, and he's like, I'm gonna go with bongos, so he does.
And I love his confidence.
I love his confidence,
works.
and it definitely works.
As a standout piece of music on its own, it's way above anything else on the album. I love the other things on the album, but for different reasons. But I love this one for a piece of music on its own because it's just brilliant.
Yeah, and that's why it stands out to me too, because I can't appreciate the other ones as much as a piece of music, but this album in general, I do not have in my regular rotation. I just don't. But this song, I do. This song has made the cut for me.
Yeah.
My Spotify top 5.
You know, you wouldn't know. It stands up as a piece on its own, and you know, you wouldn't. If you didn't know about the program, you'd have no need to know about the program.
And the fact that it came from a current events show.
Yeah,
which is like, so when I heard it originally, I'm thinking, okay, so it must have been like World in Action, must have been some sort of a drama. It sounds like maybe like a medical drama, something like that. A current events show? What?
It was like the ITV. It was on the ITV network, and it was gritty. They did some really hard hitting stuff, and they tackled some really quite significant things going on, and they did go to war zones, they did do stuff on the IRA and things like that. And the equivalent programme on the BBC was Panorama, which was kind of like a bit more sedate and a bit more like investigative. Do you know what I mean? It was the same sort of type of programming, but the World in Action was going to take you there and literally like dump you in the middle of a war zone or what was going on, and you felt like you were getting a lot more realism, if that's the right word, but it felt like it was a lot grittier. It felt like a lot more risk was taken, less particularly in like editing and what they would be prepared to show and what they would be prepared to delve into. And you're right about the sort of opening montage of like bombs going off and stuff like that. It was visually dramatic as well as like the dramatic music. And the other thing that I remember about it is, for some reason, it's kind of like symbol was the Vitruvian Man, the Leonardo da Vinci thing, and that's kind of what that's what I usually call to mind when I think about it. When I hear the music, I just see that graphic as well. But yeah, it's, as a standalone piece of music, it's great.
It's a total shot of adrenaline.
It really is.
Yeah.
It really is. And you can't say that a lot with just purely instrumental pieces. This one just is like liquid energy. It's auditory energy.
Auditory energy.
But
and as much as I love Matt's music, that's not really a description you can apply to a lot of it. Like, the guy's not a punk rocker. His music tends to be more pastoral and a little more deliberate. But yeah, this song just sounds like him cutting loose and having fun.
Yeah, well, awesome. Thank you so much for helping us with this stuff, because we literally couldn't have done it without you. So thank you. And thank you for being...
thank you so much for asking me.
Yeah, thank you for being
absolutely brilliant.
Our first and only guaranteed listener. We very much appreciate that.
And
I'm
actually...
glad it's expanded from just me.
You were the first. You're the first official.
You were also the first to write us fan mail. Not that we get like a huge influx of fan mail, but I
right,
remember
yeah,
you messaging
fangirl.
me after those early episodes with all kinds of factoids. I remember you telling me about the Morris dancers and the Remembrance Day poppy
Yep.
and just a lot of context that we would not have known otherwise.
Right, yeah, because there is a lot of imagery in this music that goes, it's like completely lost on us. So, yes, thank you
that's
for
good.
that.
I'm glad it was well received. Because hearing about it, I was thinking, oh God, did they think I was some sort of like weird stalker, just sort of like, responsible about this random stuff? So yeah, it's nice to hear that it was.
No,
it
you
was
just
well
know what you're
received.
talking about, and we don't. So.
But no, I think the podcasts have just been brilliant, and you being, Matt's obviously very sort of like rooted in British culture and stuff like that. But to hear the perceptions of his music and his creativity from your standpoint and your experience and as Americans and Canadians, I think that's been really refreshing on the podcast, because it's opened up to us to sort of think about things in different ways, because we don't have the same cultural references as you do, and you don't have the same as we do. So I think that translation of ideas has been really, really good, and I really like the way that's been fleshed out.
Thank you. Thank you.
That is
And
so
probably
nice. That's
also-
the nicest compliment.
Yeah, probably also a lot of the things that we're talking about, and y'all are listening, and you're like, what the hell are they talking about?
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad we can facilitate cultural exchange. All right, so we are in the home stretch of discussing this album, and we have our good friend Marie Osborne joining us. Hey, Marie.
AKA Maz.
AKA Maz.
Yeah.
Thanks for the reminder. Marie is one of Matt's, I feel confident in saying one of Matt's biggest fans in the world and most devoted fans. Marie, how many times would you say you've seen Matt live, if you had to guess?
Double digits for sure.
Oh,
I went
wow.
to every gig in the 2015 tour. I went to every gig in the 2016 tour. I went to 2 festivals in the middle of those 2, and there was a special one in Bedford as well. So yeah, pretty much. Oh, and my first gig actually seeing Matt was when he was supporting Steve Wilson at the Royal Albert Hall.
Oh, I heard that gig was amazing.
Yeah, it was. And just to see them up on that massive stage was fantastic. And that was my first one as well. So, yeah.
Aw.
And not only are we all incredibly jealous just that you got to see him live once, not to mention like a billion times, you also got to see his play too, which is amazing. You saw his play twice, right?
Oh, no, I saw it a bit more than that.
Oh, did you really?
Yeah, I insisted myself to see it on the opening night. And so I went by myself for that one. And then one of my friends couldn't make it until like the next night. So I went a second time. And then I went third time with another friend. And the first friend wanted to go again. So yeah, I think I went about 4 or 5 times.
Wait.
That's
What's
so
the
cool.
play? I don't know
The
what you guys are
Philanthropist.
talking. I'm totally out of the loop on
When
that
was
one.
it? 2017?
2017, I think. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my god,
Yeah.
he was like,
Which is
a
one of the
starring,
reasons
like-
why
Mhm.
he was in an actual play.
A West End play.
Yeah, but that's one of the things that I always look back on, that I didn't even know who he was then, and I'm just like, knowing how much of a shy person he is and stuff like that, I always feel very proud of him for stepping so far out of his comfort zone to do that, and I think that's really cool.
I'm surprised to hear that he did that, because I picture him as a very kind of reserved person, so that's very interesting.
You went to his Toast on Toast book signing, right? You've pretty much, if
Yeah,
Matt's done it in the past 5-7 years or so, you've been there.
Yeah, I went to that Toast. What was it? Yeah, that was at the BFI.
Mhm.
And I also travelled up to Manchester one time for a snuff box, say 15 years anniversary type thing. I can't remember.
Oh yeah,
That's
that was
so
with
cool.
Yeah,
Michael Cummings, I think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it was, and Matt obviously was on the stage as well, and he ended up sitting right behind me where I was, and so I was sitting there watching the episodes, obviously laughing, but also being very aware that Matt was sitting right behind me.
Yeah, that would have been really nerve-wracking to have him sitting behind me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
it was like, is he going to take note of where I'm laughing or where I'm not laughing?
Yeah, because he knows who you are too. So
Yeah,
he
exactly.
knows you by name. So, and
Like, I trust
not to
her.
mention the other fact that I'm incredibly jealous of you. All of that aside, is that you also live in London and you work in London, and I can't imagine that feeling of just like on any given day, just your paths crossing, and you're be like, hey, it's Matt, and you're just like running into him randomly because that's
Yeah.
happened to you before. I know. So
Yeah.
it's like, God, that's nerve-wracking.
Wait,
Anyway.
that's happened to you? What happened? Tell us more about that.
Just going on the underground as I was getting onto the tube on one carriage, he was getting in on another. You know what it's like, you just rush
Yeah.
when you're getting onto the tube, and
Right.
I was just standing there and seeing through the glass that he was in the next carriage, and it's like, this is bizarre. But I didn't want to
Oh my
shout
God.
out to him. I just stood there like, oh, there's Matt. Okay, I'll just let him get on with his business and I'll get on with mine. So yeah, I have on the odd occasion just randomly seen him.
To say that we envy you is a bit of an understatement. So just like Samantha before, Marie's going to help us with the rest of the album because most of these we had no clue about. And we are going to start with Blankety Blank, which was written by Matt's favorite, Ronnie Hazelhurst. It ran from 1978. I think it might still be on. I don't know. Marie can correct me if I'm wrong on that. Approximately 310 episodes so far. So it must have started and stopped at some point, or IMDb is wrong. It's a game show. That's all I know.
I thought it started in 79 from what I've read. Still running, but it had like sizable gaps in between. It's had many presenters over the years. I'll be honest with you, I haven't watched it in the most recent years. I think the last presenter I remember watching was Lily Savage. But me and Matt would probably have a different memory of the TV show because he's obviously older than me. He's a 70s kid, whereas I'm an 80s kid. And so Matt would probably have remembered Terry Wogan during his years, which was between 79 to 83, whereas I would remember a different presenter, Les Dawson, who was a very different comedian in my opinion, and that was between 84 to 90. You guys might not have heard of this show. It was essentially based on an American game show called Match Game, with contestants trying to match answers given by celebrity panelists to fill in the blank questions.
Yeah, I have heard of Match Game. It was that one hosted by Richard Dawson,
I can picture the guy. I can't think of what his name is because I did watch
the
that
one
with my
from Family
grandmother.
Feud, or was he just on it as a contestant? I think
Find
they
out.
rebooted Match Game not long ago too.
It looks like Alec Baldwin has presented it at some
Yeah,
point.
he's the Alec Baldwin is the rebooted host because I think I don't know if it's still on, but I
Oh.
know they rebooted it a couple of years ago. So it was hosted by Gene Rayburn. I'm thinking Richard Dawson because he was a contestant on it a lot. It's a celebrity panel
Oh.
show, and I'm
Yeah.
assuming Blankety Blank is also celebrities, right?
Yes,
Okay.
definitely. Essentially, it was statements were written for potential comedic and double entendre value.
Yeah.
I mean, I was a kid that was growing up with the likes of Carry On movies. I don't know if you've heard of those. It's basically typical British seaside humour, which, you know, as a kid and even now I still find hilarious. But essentially, contestants would think about their answer. There'd be 6 celebrities that would write their answer on cards, and essentially the contestant would give their answer. The host asks, you know, one time, give their response. The contestant earns a point from each celebrity and write down the same answer. But yeah, you'd get some, you know, some funny anecdotes and suggestions. You know,
That's so
this
funny.
lady has a big blank.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
That's what I always remember from Match Game because I didn't have any recollection of it, and then all of a sudden I was like, oh wait, was that the one that Richard Dawson was in? Because I remember him particularly being really bad with it double entendres. That's so funny that they're basically the same show. They're just renamed for.
And
UK
usually
ones.
we steal the UK's shows, but in this
Yeah.
one time they stole our show.
We were
We're
big,
allowed.
really big on game shows in the 70s, though. So
Yeah.
maybe they weren't there and they needed one. Matt said in Shindig again, he said, this is another one that's by Hazelhurst, which was a big pull, and it's not at all conventional.
And he said too in the BBC 6 music interview, Blankety Blank is crazy. It's a very odd bit of music where you have a mini moog and a kettle drum in the same bit of music. I don't know many pieces that would have those different instruments. It's just a strange piece of music that he's pushed towards a game show. So it's got this sort of repeating title, but using those odd instruments. Well, they aren't odd instruments, but married together, they are.
Blankety blank, 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 blankety blank.
This song, y'all.
Yeah.
It's so annoying. It is like, it gets stuck in your head.
Once I realized that Blankety Blank was a game show, it made a lot more sense to me because I'm like, what the heck kind of show would this be from? Because it's either a game
Yeah.
show or a kid's show. But being
thought
that it's a
kids
game
show.
show, yeah, being that it's a
Yeah.
game show, it makes much more sense. And to me, listening to them, they sounded almost identical. I don't know. And
Now, the titles that I could find on YouTube were much shorter, right?
Yeah.
He stretched this one out a
Yeah.
lot.
this is when he
Definitely.
stretched. And I thought he did a good job with the vocal too, matching it up. His vocal sounded just like the original one. I thought he did a really good job with that. And who was the singer, the female singer on this one? Was
Suzanne Barbieri.
thank you.
Marie, do you find this theme song annoying as we do?
No, not at all.
Uh-oh.
It brings back, memories, family memories. It was one of those songs, it was just catchy. So you'd go back to the playground in your school and you'd talk about the celebrities that was on it, and then just literally I can remember running around the playground just singing blankety blank, blankety blank.
I can totally picture that.
Yeah,
It would
just-
get stuck in your head for sure because it's gotten stuck
Oh my-
in my head.
It gets
Oh my
really
my
wedged
God.
in there. It's an earworm in the
Yeah.
worst possible
I've been
way.
singing
like
as
an
my
ear
dog.
parasite.
An ear parasite.
Yeah.
Trademark.
But I can
That's
see how if
amazing.
you grew up with it and you had it in the context of a game show and it's fun and you watch it with your family, then you have those feelings for it. Us, we're just like, oh no.
Yeah, you'd just be like sitting down to dinner and watching it with the whole family. And it was, even when a contestant didn't win, it was amusing because they were given this blankety blank checkbook and pen, which was just a notorious consolation prize, and it was always amusing to see that being given out as well.
I remember
cool.
watching it with my grandparents and not understanding the double entendres.
Oh,
and
right.
I remember looking at them and being like, "What is this about?" And then
Why
you
is
like,
this funny?
don't worry about it.
I suppose if I overthink it, the idea of sitting with my family and enjoying double entendres is a bit of a weird one.
A little cringy.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it was about the only way in which you could get away with that kind of humor with your family. You know what I mean?
That's something I know Matt has talked about in interviews too. I remember this coming up when he was promoting Year of the Rabbit. He talked a lot about how toilet humor is like very embedded in British sensibilities. And I think here in the States, that's considered more of a juvenile thing, whereas it seems like in the UK, people don't grow out of it.
We
Matt didn't.
love it.
My grandfather was a really big fan of Benny Hill, and I remember my mom and my grandmother just being like, "Oh my god, why are they watching this?"
Literally,
But
as soon as you
he
said
loved
Benny
it.
Hill, that theme tune just come into my
Oh,
head.
yeah.
Yes,
Now I've
one
got
of the
him running
greatest
around with the
ever.
ladies.
But I remember distinctly watching that show with my grandfather and him just being hysterical laughing. But I always think of that kind of humor as like kind of almost quintessential British humor, like lots of double entendres, lots of just inappropriate behavior. But it's so funny.
Not to sound dramatic, but he was like a hero for me when I was a kid. Just watching him was hilarious.
Yeah.
All
It was
the time.
fantastic. Every time I see him, I think of my grandfather. They're just connected to me. Yeah. Did we have anything else to say about Blankety Blank?
Just that having recorded this piece, I'm very glad that I'm under no obligation to listen to it anytime soon.
There's certain things you gotta keep to yourself. You can't share to the whole world. So if you don't appreciate blankety blank, that's fine. It's more for me,
Yeah. I think
Fair.
at the end of this, we're just going
Fair.
to give this whole album back to y'all and be like, okay, get out of this.
Yeah.
We're going to keep World in Action, though, because we really love that one. And maybe the Doctor Who game.
So that brings us to another one of the station idents on this album, Thames Television. This was written by Johnny Hawksworth. Matt told Shindig, this is the same thing as the LWT. It always came before the Sweeney or Rainbow, so I liked it. And of course, he put it in the same placement on the album right before Rainbow. This is a station ID, or ident, as you Brits like to say. Listening to the original Thames Television theme, there's really not a whole lot of differentiation. This is a pretty faithful replica.
exactly the same. And I always thought it was a French horn, but it's not. It's a trombone. Trombone played by Graham Mann.
I'm impressed you could tell the difference because I couldn't.
But yeah, this is one that I actually remembered too, because not only a station idea, it's connected to the beginning of the show. So one of the shows that I used to watch had the Thames theme attached to it. It could have even been in school watching some sort of a BBC production or something like that where the Thames theme was attached.
Okay, so you'd never hear the Thames theme for any BBC programme.
So it wasn't BBC. Okay.
No, definitely not, because Thames Television is what would modern be known as ITV.
Okay.
So in weird context, BBC is like channel 1 and 2, and then ITV is channel 3. So yeah, completely separate. You'd never hear any of those for any BBC
So I
programme.
wonder what I would have
know.
watched that would have had it on there. Because even the graphic I knew. I was like, oh yeah, I've seen that before. So I don't know which, because I mean, to us, it's just like, it's British TV. It's all BBC, you know? We have no idea. Unless it's
we know
Channel 4.
Channel 4.
Right, now we know Channel 4.
Exactly.
But other than that, it was all the same. Like, I couldn't tell you what's on ITV. So I don't know what I would have seen it on, but I definitely knew that one. It was on something that I used to watch.
Back in those days, every single region had different versions, different like network stations. So it kind of shows that Matt obviously was living in the like London region or just outside of London region when he was watching these programs, to remember that, because if he was living in somewhere like Plymouth, he would have had a completely different network that was delivering the ITV. I'm just going to keep calling it ITV.
So you know how I knew the Thames theme? It
Yeah,
was
no.
on before Benny Hill.
Oh,
Oh my god!
that would make
That's funny.
sense.
That
And
makes
Mr.
perfect
Bean.
sense.
And Mr. Bean, for that matter.
That would make
Yeah.
sense.
That
Yeah.
would definitely make sense.
Yeah.
Watch a lot of Mr. Bean.
Well, Matt obviously positioned this one strategically on the album because it leads right into Rainbow, one of, I think this was the first single or second single from the album, right? After Are You Being Served? This was written by Hugh Portnow, Hugh Fraser, and Tim Thomas. Rainbow is one of the shows that we were able to find more information about. It seems like this is one of the more iconic shows from this album. It ran over the course of 1,045 episodes from 1972 to 1992. The version that you hear at the start of the show is actually a smaller part of a full version, also called Rainbow, that was released as a single on the offshoot of the Music for Pleasure label, which is just the best music label name I've ever heard. The single was called Surprise, Surprise. That was released in 1973 with the B-side Windy Day. You know, that kind of reminds me a little of how some of the early songs from Sesame Street, which it sounds like would be kind of the American analog here, like the Sing was covered by the Carpenters, I think, and some of those songs actually kind of went up the charts and became hits.
Yep. Yeah, there was a lot of them that would have been similar to that.
And then Matt said in the Shindig magazine quote, "For anyone my age, that was one of the most memorable kids' TV programs for a bunch of reasons. One of which being the music. It's instantly recognizable. You recognize the drums straight away, and you know you're about to get Rainbow. And then when Rainbow kicks in, it's such a catchy, simple theme. It would have been stupid not to include that. And it was really good fun to record. The main thing was getting those sounds right."
From one of the BBC Six interviews, the interviewer says, "I just love how faithful you are to the original themes, particularly, for example, Rainbow. It's not far off the very original version, is it?" Matt says, "Well, no, because the thing is, they got it right. So, you know, I didn't want to put too much of a stamp on these things because they sound great anyway."
That's not 100% true, though, because if you listen to the full version, which I think we've all checked out, this song is actually a lot longer than Matt's version. He did cut out a significant part of this. Talking about his version in Electric Sound, they pointed out that the Rainbow theme is darker than you'd remember. He said, yes, there's the cheery bit with the colored lines dashing about, but there's also a plaintive middle section lamenting the loss of green for the rivers, gold for the cornfields, as the setting sun turns everything to shadow. Matt said, if you buy the Rainbow album from 1972, that's track 1 with that melancholic middle section. In the TV program, they just use the beginning and the end. Y'all can't see it, but Marie has her, is it Zippy?
Yep.
Zippy!
Zip stuffed animal,
It's so
stuffed
cute.
toy, which he's holding up to the camera. Matt has a similar Zippy that he keeps in his studio, right? We've seen
does,
that
yeah.
in actually quite a few pictures now from his studio, and I believe he's even held it up to the camera in some of the Zoom interviews he did promoting What We Do in the Shadows. Zippy has the place of honor next to his mixing desk, so obviously near and dear to his heart.
A bit like Blankety Blank, me and Matt probably would have been watching it from different years, and it would have had a slightly different format with, I'm pretty sure Matt's years would have had more of some characters called Rod, Jane and Freddie, who were like regular singers and performers that were part of it. But from like what you said earlier on, the series was originally conceived to be the equivalent of Sesame Street. So you were very right with that idea. Essentially, Rainbow just revolves around the main puppet characters of Zippy, George and Bungle and their inquisitive ways. They're pretty much like children, how they are on the show. And yeah, I just remember being a kid and just completely loving this show. So much so that I had my first pet, a German Shepherd who I named Zippy as well. I'll never forget, we were at my aunt's house picking from a litter of puppies, and my cousin happened to have Rainbow on the television. This one little puppy was just yelping every time the name Zippy was being said on the show, and I was like, that's mine. He's my boy. I want him. And I just named him Zippy. Yeah.
So it would have been the same. I think it's like the same sort of thing, like with real people and puppets or costumes. So kind of similar Sesame Street. Like Sesame Street, the Muppets are childlike. Most of them are.
Mhm.
So and I was like grew up on Sesame Street. So I'm sure if I had Rainbow, it would have been the same for me. I would have grown up on it and I would have loved every second of it. And I'm sure this would have been hugely nostalgic for me. It would have been like if Matt did the Sesame Street theme song, and I would have been crazy.
Oh yeah.
Although, he really should do the Sesame Street theme song because I think he would do that well.
I do feel that Matt could easily do an American version because, us Brits, we did watch plenty of the very mainstream American shows, so we would appreciate it just as much as you guys would.
Yeah, you guys grew up on Sesame Street too, right?
Yeah. That
you
was
just
a
had
Channel
both.
4, program for us on in the mornings, I believe.
And you have a lot more American imports there than we do British imports here. Like it was much more widely available for you, like our biggest shows, to go there. Whereas for us, it really wasn't at all. We had to seek them. We still have to seek them out.
I think for you guys, it's like mainly focused, especially if it's a BBC program, it's mainly focused on like BBC America. Whereas all of our channels try and bid for American shows, so they could be on, anything from a normal terrestrial channel.
There's very few British shows that are on BBC America. Like Doctor Who is the big one, the Graham Norton Show, and
very few British comedies.
Yeah, there's like no British comedies on there. The Watch is on there, and what's the show with Sandra Oh?
Oh,
that
is
one's
that
popular? And Black Mirror was on there. That's really all I can remember.
It's funny to think now, but that's really how we became friends. Like, we sort of met in this Facebook group, but I, for a while, had kind of a connection that was passing me not entirely authorized copies of some of Matt's British stuff that you couldn't get in the US. And I messaged Jessie asking if she wanted a copy of Road to Brexit. And here we are.
And I very much did, because I couldn't find it. And also House of Fools, because we can't get that at all here. There's no way to find it. So yeah, that was how I watched those. I mean, even still, you still can't watch Toasted Tinseltown here, which is crazy.
Yeah, I don't want to be driven to crime. I'm generally a law-abiding woman.
Right?
Rainbow, pretty much like Sesame Street, it had an educational format, consisted of scenes where the characters were learning things from each episode. And probably much like Sesame Street, you'd have real world footage, songs and stories, or, and there was even animated bits in the show as well, so it had a good mixture of everything. It was bizarre though, because of the way the puppet characters would interact with each other. I remember George being kind of like the mopey one, Zippy was the mouthy one, which is probably why he had the zip around his mouth. And Bungle was just the one who would moan. I was watching an episode, preempting for this, and I was just like, I can't believe how miserable these characters were in this particular episode.
Am I stereotyping horribly if I say that seems like a very British thing?
I was thinking the same thing.
I mean, the closest equivalent I can think of would be Eeyore, and that's
British.
Winnie the Pooh. That's
Oscar the
British.
Grouch.
Oscar,
Right?
that's
Like
true.
Oscar the Grouch is kind of like Zippy. Because I was thinking about this the other day, actually. I was like, oh, Zippy's kind of like Oscar. Like he's like, just kind of a pain in the ass and kind of a jerk a little bit. I could relate to that. Even as a child, I was like, yeah, the world is terrible and annoying.
I got my pessimistic viewpoint from Oscar the Grouch. He's the one I really related to.
Yeah. Oscar
Even
and
as a
Eeyore.
6-year-old.
But yeah, with the guys in Rainbow, just everything kind of revolved around their house. The Rainbow House where all the main characters lived. Essentially, they just all lived together and had their little episode, subject episode days. Really.
Up above the streets and houses, rainbow climbing high. Everyone can see it smiling over the sky. Paint the whole world with a rainbow. All along the streams and rivers, shining in the lakes, see the colors of the rainbow as the morning breaks. Paint the whole world with a rainbow.
So I don't know if there's other versions of the Rainbow Song. I don't think I listened to the full version. I just listened to the theme song. But Matt's version starts off with drums, and the TV theme doesn't, from what I can tell. I really like his vocals on this too. I think he did a really good job with it. He just kind of went for it. And I think this song, because it's for a kid's show, it's obviously for a kid's show, it's annoying in that way. But at the same time, it's not like Blankety Blank where it's just super annoying. It kind
feels
of
like a real fleshed out song.
Yeah, it sounds like an actual song, and it's kind of lovely.
Well, it is an actual song.
Yeah, it just doesn't feel it's just not annoying because it's just repetitive and but I'm not gonna just go and listen to a kid's song. I wouldn't go and just listen to maybe actually that's a lie. I would listen to the Sesame Street theme. But I didn't grow up with it, so I don't know.
I'm being offended greatly here. Repetitive? You're saying the Rainbow Song was repetitive?
No, it's not. Like Blankety Blank is repetitive.
Yeah.
This one is not. I don't think it is because it's an actual song. It's not just broken down into little pieces like a theme song. And then, it's got that like psychedelic middle section to it. So it is thought out, and I do like his vocals on this. I think that was some contention that we didn't all like his vocals, but I like his vocals on this one. I think he did a really good job.
Yeah, definitely. I think it was a beautiful version that Matt done, especially the way it kind of gets a bit darker in the middle compared to the original, because Matt gave his spin and it was great. It just, especially for someone that watched it as a kid and then needed to appreciate it to be more grown up on Matt's album, that's why it felt that much better for me. It was a grown-up version of that theme tune,
right?
We've grown up, so the song's grown up.
I've always
I was just gonna say, I think too, you can tell what shows on this album that he really did have a close affinity to, because he did give it that spin. He did take the extra time to give it a little bit of his own feel to it. This is one, the Doctor Who theme is one, and the next one I think is one also. There's several that you can tell which shows he really liked. And those are the ones he put a little special care in. He didn't replicate them perfectly. He put his own little flair on them. And I really appreciate that.
Yeah,
that was it.
completely.
So moving on to Sorry. This is one that Matt has a long history with. The song was written by Gaynor Coburn and Hugh Wisdom. It ran from, I think, 1981 to 1988, approximately 42 episodes. This is a song that Matt plays live all the time. This is on the live album.
We've actually discussed this one from Matt Berry and the Maples live.
We have indeed.
Yeah.
This is not a Ronnie Hazelhurst song, right?
No, he arranged it, but he didn't actually write it.
Okay, just wanted to clarify
We should probably
Yeah.
probably mention actually that Matt's affinity for Sorry, his love of this song, goes way back to the earliest days of his career. He actually performed this for, I believe, New Year's Eve on Charlie Brooker's Screen Wipe back in, what was it, 2006? Like the Opium era. You can find footage of that on YouTube, but he has been playing this song for a long, long time.
So on Charlie Brooker's Screen Wipe, it was episode 4.4. And so Matt actually said, of all Ronnie's work, I would say my favorite piece is Sorry. The visuals work perfectly with the music. What I love about the Sorry title sequence is that what you're seeing is fairly simple, animated neon signs which move in time with the music. It just works perfectly. I could watch those all day long.
Did you notice that we always give Tara quotes to read that say sorry quite a bit? Because like the only time you hear her Canadian accent, she says sorry.
Sorry.
Again, in Shindig, Matt said, it's one we all knew because we've played live for the past 10 years. Again, it's something not commercially available. It was a fast one to record. I think it just took one take and we recorded a 10-minute version that went into the ska dub thing, and then I edited the whole thing. It was a Ronnie Hazelhurst arrangement.
Talking about the TV themes version of Sorry on the Beige Green Room podcast, September 11th, 2018, Matt said it was actually meant for a straight drama. It wasn't meant for that sitcom. But the thing I love about it is it's kind of bittersweet in that, you know, it's kind of, you think it's going to be happy and it's not. It sounds kind of sad and it never kind of settles. It always jumps around. So you don't know where the fuck it's going or what's kind of happening with it. That's why it's rich in sound. It makes you want to listen. The host said it has that oddly easy to morph into a slightly reggae feel. And Matt says, yeah, in the whitest way. And then they talk a little bit more in the interview about white reggae and what that means. We'll spare you that part. But but does sound like white reggae. I would agree with that.
Matt said in Electric Sound magazine, on Sorry, there's a bunch of things that shouldn't work together. People thought of the Police as Western sounding reggae, but this takes that a stage further, where it's almost posh reggae. It doesn't make any sense. You certainly wouldn't put that music with a Ronnie Corbett sitcom, and that's fair.
I would say that Matt's version is kind of more reggae than the original. Like, having listened to the original recording, it's definitely got a very of its time, early 80s synth feel. I like it, but it almost feels kind of tinny, whereas Matt's version feels a lot warmer, less synthetic, which is kind of ironic given Matt's love of synths. And yeah, he really does lean into that reggae sound.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. And I wasn't sure if the tinniness was because it was an old recording, or if his is just new and up to date, or if it was meant to sound like that, because yeah, you're right, his does sound like new and warm and fresh, and he does keep it really true to the original, but this is another one where he just makes it his own, and I love that. This one's so good.
It's not surprising that it was knocked out in one take. I mean, this is a song that his band was probably able to play with their eyes closed, half asleep.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Having done it so many times. I imagine that this is a fun one live with the crowd just kind of grooving to it.
Yeah,
like,
I agree.
I can see this being a fun one in a crowded club.
I can see that too.
People going, sorry. Yeah, it's a fun.
What was the show actually about?
Do you know what? It was an odd show, and I'll be honest, I watched it, grew up watching reruns of it because it was a little bit before I was, really able to remember. But it did star Ronnie Corbett, who in the UK is very famous for being half of a comedy duo called The Two Ronnies, where he worked with Ronnie Barker, and they were very famous doing comedy sketch shows on British television. And he starred as a 40-something-year-old character called Timothy. He was a librarian. Essentially, he was living at home with his parents. His mother was quite overbearing, shall we say, and his poor father was quite henpecked by his wife, and basically essentially he longed to leave home and to find love. Yeah, being a 40-something still living at home with his parents, I can relate to that.
Marie, does he find love?
Do you know, I don't remember.
I bet he does.
Spoiler alert, Tara. Gosh.
Yeah.
His mum was constantly kind of scheming and manipulating him so that he couldn't find love. And it was funny because she had a catchphrase, "Language, Timothy." She would always say anytime he said something that was slightly rude or swear word or something like that. And I don't know how you feel over in the States and stuff about catchphrases, but we love a good catchphrase in the UK. You know, again, thinking about the playground, just running around. Even now, I'll use that catchphrase if, say, some fella who I don't expect to use bad language suddenly comes out with something. It's like, "Ooh, language, Timothy." You know?
That's
amazing.
I'd be curious how Matt feels about catchphrases, seeing as he has more than a few.
Gosh.
And I think they're all kind of inadvertent.
Yes,
I don't get the feeling
stuck
any
with
of them.
so many of them.
Right.
Yeah.
They've just kind of like attached themselves to him. It wasn't meant to be. They weren't meant to be catchphrases.
Yeah, I don't think
Maybe-
he ever seeks out to do a catchphrase, you know?
You don't think that I can hear
happens.
you, Clint Fandango, was a catchphrase? You don't think that was meant to sort of catch on that way?
I don't know.
Because it's in every episode.
I mean, it is in every episode. It would be impossible for that not to become a catchphrase, I think. Whiskey, I don't know how that one became. I mean, he didn't
My
say
husband and
that
I do that a
much.
lot. Whiskey.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, obviously father, because that seriously is one of the greatest introductions of any character in any sitcom
It
in
is.
television
I-
history.
I can't think of one that beats it.
I can't
No.
either. And that's just like that's not biased. That's really, can you think of a time that a character was introduced in that way that made such an impact on the rest of the series? And then Bat, I mean, that was not even written in. That was just something he said to segue into him turning into a bat. So
He's just too funny. He's too funny
Yeah.
for his own good.
he sells it, man. Just sells it.
Yeah.
Oh, and then
absolutely.
the craziest one from Garth Marenghi, you and he were buddies. Like, how did that even become a catchphrase? I don't even think I realized that he
that's
said it the
still
first
one of
time.
his best line deliveries. That's still one of his best line deliveries, even at this
I
point in
don't
his
know.
career.
It's just the way he says it. You know, people just catch on and they love the way he pronounces things, you know?
Yeah.
Like,
And the fact that
some
he's
people-
dubbing himself in Garth Marenghi, like the
Yeah.
slight mismatch between his words and his mouth, it's just perfect.
I'm not a huge Mighty Boosh fan. I mean, especially the first season that Matt was in, but I always I don't know why, but the part where he says, "Naboo, are you in a trance?" He's like, "No, I'm listening to Fleetwood Mac." That always sticks in my head.
Rumors? Tusk. Yeah. And then he just gets this look of sheer horror.
Like literally my favorite scene from the entire series of the Mighty Boosh. I don't know why. I think any scene that Naboo was in, though, is one of my favorite scenes because I think he was the real star of that show. So funny. Wow, we went on a tangent. Okay.
We do that. We do
We
that.
do that. Moving on to the last song, which is Open University. Marie, what do you have on this one?
So essentially, it's the theme is the opening of Divertimento Opus 49 by Leonard Salcedo. He's essentially an English composer of Spanish descent who wrote more than 180 compositions.
Oh, that's a lot. So
Mhm.
he just so this is just a segment of that song then?
Yeah, literally
Okay.
just the opening.
Hmm.
I think I read like 3 trumpets and 3 trombones or something along those lines. It was 3 of 2 different, instruments. That was that,
Yeah.
Whereas the version on this album only has the trombone.
Trombone, which was
played
another
by
one
Graham
where I-
Mann.
Yeah, it was another one that I thought was more than one horn. I thought it was multiple horns.
Yeah, it
wonder
replicates that
if
sound
he-
well.
Yeah, I wonder if he layered it with it because the
He must
trombone
have
is very
layered it.
versatile. So I wonder if he layered it to make it sound like multiple horns.
I think it must be multi-tracked.
Yeah, yeah.
Speaking to Shindig magazine, Matt said of Open University, "This comes from being at school and it takes me back because it was always played before we had to watch the program. Usually something quite dry and boring from what I remember." Maria, is that your recollection as well?
I didn't really watch the program. My main memory of it is that it was often the last sound I would hear before going to bed. So to me, it's kind of beautiful that it's the last song of the album.
Oh,
You know,
fun.
it's that whole, and now it's time for me to go to bed.
It's nice. Yeah.
What is it? So it's not like an
Yeah.
actual TV show, or it is?
It is, but there's a lot of history behind it. So the Open University is actually something in the UK. It was essentially founded by the Labour government back in '65. It's a model about widening access to the highest standards of scholarships in higher education, and to set up a planning committee for university vice chancellors, etc., etc. But what they wanted to do was to work with the BBC in order to create these educational programs to help with studying. The Open University is actually one of only two UK higher education institutions to actually gain accreditation with the United States. The dream of it, I suppose you could say, was always from the beginning to create television programs to help with these courses. And the first broadcast was back in '71. A lot of people, benefited from the TV program. They say over 2 million people benefited from these courses. Unfortunately, though, with the way life progresses, they had to end the broadcasting of the show back in 2006 because they just decided that formats like DVD and having these programs on the internet would just be far more accessible for the newer generations.
Understandably.
Yeah, you watch them on demand that way.
So
That's
this was the
interesting.
sort of thing that you would watch, like Matt mentions, watching class when your teacher didn't feel like doing much teaching that day, or when you had a substitute. This would be sort of something that would be wheeled in on that TV Jesse mentioned.
Definitely, yeah. Those that studied university, this would definitely have been helpful for them. The BBC was quite notorious when it comes to creating television programs to help with education. I remember when I was younger and I was doing my GCSEs, they would have a bite-sized TV program for teenagers that were doing their GCSEs, and it was always very helpful. So back in those days, before we were really using the internet, it was so helpful.
That's
Can
really
I just say, as an American, that I consider myself more savvy about British culture than like your average Texan? That's probably not saying a lot, but the British educational system is just baffling to me. Like, I cannot. Like, we have grades 1 through 12, then college if you choose to go to college. I cannot make any sense of GCSEs and A levels.
GCs, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't get it either.
Yeah.
I'm not even sure if they're still called GCSEs now. I feel like everything keeps changing. Like, GCSEs were secondary education, so what would that have been? Let's see, you got 1 to 6 in primary, then I went from 7 to 11 in secondary. Yeah, what would year 11 be for you guys?
High school.
That's, junior year of high school.
Yeah, so that would have been when we would have gone for our GCSEs. And then some schools you could do an extra 2 years to do your A levels, or you could go on to college and do your A levels. So that would be up to like year 13 for you guys, I suppose.
So you can do your A levels either way.
So
When
confusing.
do you guys have like your first set subject exams?
We don't really. There are if you take advanced placement AP classes, or if you're going for what's called an international baccalaureate or an IB degree. But those are really the only subject matter tests you would take. Other than that, it's just a generalized curriculum.
And that's in high school, and that's like usually the end of high school, like your junior, senior year
And
too.
senior year, exactly.
Yeah.
That's bizarre to me, because once you hit secondary school, it's all about the different subject,
Yeah, and even
No.
the AP
Not at all
classes
here.
are optional, and it really people take them just so you could do it in high school and get college credit, and you don't have to pay for the college credits.
You guys learn the subject, but you don't have an exam for that particular subject for a qualification.
Not
I
for a
mean,
qualification.
Not for qualification, no. There are a lot more standardized tests now than there used to be when we went through school. Like, there's a lot, especially in Florida, there are a lot of standardized tests now, which is probably a lot closer to what you guys have.
I remember taking them in grade 12, and it was like, this is the new standardized test. And I'm like, these fucking suck.
Mm-hmm. Especially
Yeah,
for a
I had
bad
to
test
take them
taker.
growing up too.
Yeah, we had some. We didn't have a lot, but it was more of to show how the school was doing, not how the individual student was doing.
That's
So
And a lot of
Yeah.
places, funding is contingent on it, which
exactly.
is bullshit, but that's a whole other conversation. That's a tangent we won't go down.
I mean,
Yeah.
for the UK, when it comes to GCSEs, if you wanted to go into work, it was very important that we had the individual subjects, because your employer was like, look, you need to have a minimum of grade C in English, a minimum of grade C in maths, to get even the most basic job, to work at McDonald's. That's what they would be wanting from you.
Okay, so that I can say for sure that we do not have that.
No,
Even standardized
absolutely
tests. There's no way an
No.
employer would know
No.
anything about what our individual subjects were. They would see that you either have a high school diploma or a GED, which is the equivalent of a high school diploma, or
Yep.
like a
A
bachelor
college
degree.
degree.
Yeah,
So
whatever degree
there
you have
wouldn't
in your
be
actual
anything-
field, but that's it.
So there wouldn't be anything on that diploma breaking down what your strengths and weaknesses were.
No.
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 It might say that you graduated with honors or high
Yeah.
honors, but
Yeah.
that would be just a general.
No, like for me, with my current job, even though I'm 40 now and I've been working for them for 6 years, like you still need to have your GCSE certificates. Like
Oh my god.
they gave us these special NRA folders to keep them in, and anyone from the 90s and before would always remember these folders, because even now you still carry them around.
Oh my
If your
gosh.
house is
Oh
on
my
fire-
god, yeah.
If your house is on fire, that better be the thing you reach for, because your employer will always want to see a copy of your certificates.
That's
If you're
crazy.
like a high office, they're always going to want to see those.
So what do people do that come from abroad that work there? Like, what if I wanted to get a job in the
you
UK?
better have a certificate or a qualification from America that's the equivalent of what.
Fucking
It
not
would be
getting a
equivalent
job.
though. I've actually looked into this because I've flirted with the idea of going abroad at various points, and
Do it.
maybe they need social workers. An American bachelor's or master's degree is considered equivalent. Like,
Oh, okay.
that's
Well, that's good
not-
news. Because I'm thinking,
When you
okay,
get to
I
that
have no
point-
idea where my high school diploma even is. I don't know. My parents might have it. I have my college diploma just because I have that framed.
Yeah,
But,
I think
I don't
that
even know where my
the
college
higher
did.
qualifications are easier to transfer. The equivalent of British ones. I think the lower ones it would be tougher.
Thank God. Okay.
Yeah.
Whew. That's
But
Very
yeah, like-
because I was
educational.
literally about to lose sleep tonight. Like, oh my god, I can't ever move to the UK because I don't have any sort of breakdown of my grades from high school.
You're in college, you're okay.
Yeah,
I have a
'cause
college degree.
the good thing about it being individual subjects is dependent on what kind of job you're going for.
See, that's so funny that even as an adult, you're still being based on what you did in school
I was so
rather than
stupid
just
in
like
high
work
school.
experience. That's so
Uh,
weird.
Yeah.
I didn't take high school seriously at all, and now I'm like a fucking superstar at like my job. So it'd be crazy to me. They're like, "Well, you can't do bookkeeping, you can't do admin because like
Even though
you
you
didn't
learned it
pass
on
your
the job.
maths.
Yeah.
to be like, oh, your maths isn't good enough." But it's just really weird to be judged when you're fucking 17 and 18 because I
Yeah.
didn't know shit. I was an idiot. I didn't take it seriously. Like I was smart, but I didn't take it seriously
That's
at all.
that's baffling to me.
If you're going to go into, say, the civil service, then yeah, you've got to have qualifications.
Well, you know what the funny thing is too, that for employers, regardless of what you're looking for, what kind of job, they'll have certain qualifications that they're looking for, like an associate degree, which is like a 2-year college degree, or a bachelor's degree, which is a 4-year degree. But they don't even care if it's for the actual position. You just have to have a
Yeah.
degree.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
like, I
want to know you suffered. Did you suffer? You can get it.
Right, exactly. Like
Basically, yeah.
I have a bachelor of science degree in psychology. My job has nothing to do with that, but it required a degree.
like you said, it's just about having those A levels, and they go, oh,
Yeah.
okay, yeah, you've done
Yeah,
that.
just like to say that I did
Yeah.
it. I'm like, oh, good, okay.
No,
when
Matt's
I
kind of
used-
talked about that too, right? How he has that degree in contemporary art, and he knew by the time he was done with university that he didn't want to work as an artist.
Yeah.
Just
I knew by the
He's
time I
very
was done with
good.
university that I didn't want to be a psychologist.
that's fair. Very fair.
Money well
You're
spent.
very similar in that way.
So I don't know. I mean, I think it would be fun now that we've finished talking about like all of the UK themes. What if Matt was to do a volume 2 of TV themes, which I know it's been discussed. I don't know how much he's actually given thought to it, like seriously. But
Well, we
thought-
read that quote from S is for Synthesizers earlier in the show, and he seemed to shut that down pretty handily.
Yeah. Well, anyway, if he was looking for any sort of inspiration, I thought it'd be fun to maybe suggest some shows that we would like for him to cover. That I have a bunch of shows that I think would be really cool in his wheelhouse, shows from the same era as the ones that he picked for this album. Some of these are shows that I grew up watching, mostly reruns, but that are still on TV, like The Rockford Files is an amazing theme. Columbo, obviously, and we know that he has some familiarity with Columbo because I think he used some of the opening title sequence sort of esque in Toast to Tinseltown. He kind of mimicked the Columbo opening sequence. So we know
The
he's
title
at least,
cards.
the title cards, exactly.
Yeah.
So we know he's at least familiar with Columbo. The Electric Company is just a jam. Barney Miller, Dallas, Chips, which was one of my all-time favorite shows when I was a kid.
I love that show so much. Yeah.
Sanford and Son, which is, I think he would do amazing things with that one. The Tic-Tac-Toe theme, if he wants to throw in a cheesy game show. And then What's Happening, obviously. But there's so many really good TV themes, American TV themes in that 70s and early 80s era that I think he could do like a whole album and just have an absolute field day with it.
I don't actually know a lot of the ones you were just mentioning. I'm gonna literally Google them
Probably mostly
tomorrow.
before your time.
I'm
Yeah.
literally Googling as we speak.
Yeah, that's exactly it. So
Files and Columbo are the only things that sound familiar to me.
same. So I couldn't help but to think of if Matt could do a Canadian version of this, or if somebody else wants to. Polka Dot Door, Under the Umbrella Tree, Road to Avonlea, Mr. Dress Up, Fraggle Rock, which I'm not sure. Did you guys get that in America?
Heck yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I think I thought that one was American. And
Fraggle
the
Rock
next
is
one,
on
too.
Apple TV now too.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
It is like, that is such a jam. That is like such a jam. And then there's Reading Rainbow. And then to get like really Canadian, Degrassi High, Inspector
I can't even
Gadget, and
think of
Today's
what that could-
Special.
Oh my god, today's special.
Okay.
Oh my god,
You
I
know
loved
that?
that show. That's the one with
Yes.
the mannequin, right? And he'd only
Yeah.
oh my god.
It's
I'm
like,
just staring at you
sure.
both blankly. I've never heard of this.
Loved that show so much.
Maria,
Yeah,
are you as
Canadians-
lost as I am?
Yes.
Yes,
I-
okay.
Jesse.
I don't think
I'm
most people would
amazed,
know what
so-
today's special is. I really don't. Courtney, did you think of any shows?
I did. I get the feeling that I grew up watching less TV than both of you because a lot of these references are just lost on me. I mean, I've heard of some of these shows, but haven't watched a lot of them. What I grew up on was TGIF, ABC's TGIF lineup. So I would love to hear Matt tackle some of those ultra cheesy TGIF theme songs, you know, Step by Step and Full House. Not because they're great songs. They're not. They're not good songs. But neither are some of the songs that he covers here, to be totally blunt. And and Marie's giving me a death stare. And I know I would love to hear him turn some of those just over the top late 80s, early 90s, like power ballads into these psychedelic jams, because I know that that would be his take on it.
I can't imagine a psychedelic version of the Full House theme. So funny.
I'm
That
here
is
for
fun.
it though. That would be awesome.
That was a
Throwing
good
a lot of
song.
simps
That
and
was
like
a
a
good
bongo
theme.
backing.
That's like saying I want him to do a psychedelic version of the Golden Girls theme.
I would listen to that too.
I do. That's
Oh.
a good addition.
Gosh,
I would love that.
guys.
And for something more contemporary, you know what I would love? It's a little on the nose, but whatever. I would love to hear him cover You're Dead. By
Yes,
Nora
I
Tanega.
would like that too. I think
Yeah.
that would be really cool. I don't think he'd do it though.
He should. Well,
He should, yeah,
though.
for maybe an intro
not?
later in the series.
Oh yeah,
uh,
that would be cool.
Series finale or something.
Anyway, should we wrap this up? As
I don't know,
always,
my brain feels melty.
So, thank you so much, Marie, for helping us, and thank you again to Samantha. We couldn't have done it without you guys. Without that, that was the kind of insight and knowledge that we really, really needed, because we wouldn't have known any of that.
I would have lost my mind if my favorite artist had come up with a TV themes from like Canadian, TV shows. So obviously, like we do not get it in the same way, but that's why.
But
we're,
we
like,
get
so
it
glad
in
you
that
We get
effect.
it.
Yeah,
You
like
know
because
what
I
would
can
love to
picture
hear Matt
myself
cover?
with her saying, thinking about it as a child and just hearing him do it. And then
Mhm.
I can think of myself listening to like Sesame Street, for example, and
Yeah.
just being like, oh my God, what if Matt did that song? I would feel the same way. It just sucks that we don't have that connection to these particular songs.
It works so well for me because of the age of the songs and when
they hit you in that sweet spot of nostalgia.
Yes, that's it. Exactly.
Sweet nostalgia.
And it's the nostalgia of it that we don't get. And that's what you guys conveyed. And we really appreciate your help on all of that. We've got more stuff coming up soon. In the meantime, feel free to always follow us on Instagram and TikTok and Twitter and Facebook. We are at Obsessed Obscure. We'll, as always, put all of the links to all of the stuff that we talked about today in the description of the episode. And we have the Discord channel. If you'd like to chat with us more, feel free, send us a message. However you want to get in touch, we're always happy to chat.
All right, until next time.
Yeah. Until next time.
Until next time, guys.
I think my heart now beats for 3.